Good morning, students. How are you doing? I hope you're all fine. In today's lesson, I'm going to talk about Waiting for Godot Major Themes Part 1. So let's get started with the humor and the absurd. Waiting for Godot is a prime example of what has come to be known as the theater of the absurd. The play is filled with nonsensical lines, wordplay, meaningless dialogue, and characters who abruptly shift emotions and forget everything, ranging, ranging from their own identities to what happened yesterday. All of this contributes to an absurd humor throughout the play. However, this humor is often uncomfortably mixed together with a tragic or serious content to make a darker kind of comedy. Estragon refers to billions of others who have been killed and describes being beaten by anonymous they. Lucky, whose ill-fitting name is itself darkly comic, is treated horribly and physically abused on stage, and Vladimir Estragon talk nonchalantly and pleasantly about suicide. All this has a discomforting effect on the audience, who is not sure how to react to this absurd mixture of comedy and tragedy, seriousness and playfulness. The absurdity caused by the seeming mismatch between characters' tones and the content of their speech can be seen as a reaction to a word emptied of meaning and significance, emptied of order, purpose. If the word is meaningless, it makes no sense to see it as comic or tragic, good or bad. Beckett thus presents an eerie play that sits uneasily on the border between tragedy and comedy. As I've told you, Waiting for Godot has a tragic and comic element at the same time. Now, let's talk about waiting, boredom, and nihilism. As Beckett's title indicates, the central act of the play is waiting. It's not Godot, it's waiting. And one of the most salient aspects of the play is that nothing really seems to happen. Vladimir and Stragon spend the entire play waiting for Godot, and they know that Godot will not come. Estragon repeatedly wants to leave, but Vladimir insists that they stay in case Godot actually shows up. As a result of this endless waiting, both Vladimir and Estragon are bored to death. As Vladimir himself puts it, both Vladimir and Estragon repeat throughout the play that there is nothing to be done and nothing to do. They struggle to find ways to pass the time, so they end up conversing back and forth about nothing at all, including talking about how they don't know what to talk about simply to occupy themselves while waiting. The boredom of the characters on the stage reflects the boredom of the audience. Beckett has deliberately constructed a play where not only his characters but also his audience wait for something that never happens. Just like Estragon and Vladimir, the audience waits during the play for some major events or a climax that never occurs. Audience members might at times feel uncomfortable and won't like Estragon to leave, but are bound to stay in case Godot should actually arrive later in the play. All of this waiting for nothing, talking about nothing and doing nothing, contributes to a pervasive atmosphere of nihilism in the play. Broadly defined, nihilism is a denial of any significance or meaning in the world. Deriving from the Latin word for nothing, nihil, it is a word used centered around negation, claiming that there is no truth, there is no morality, there is no value, or in extreme form, there is no reality. This seems to describe the word of the play largely emptied out of meaning, emotion, and substance, leading to characters blather on endlessly in insignificant conversation, insignificant conversation, giving the place deep exploration of the absurd humor and feelings of alienation that arise from this nihilistic understanding of the world. One could say that waiting for Godot is at its core about nothing. Sorry, one could say that waiting for Godot is at its core about nothing. Now let's talk about humanity, companionship, suffering, and dignity. Beckett's play is filled with a great deal of physical, mental, and emotional suffering. Look, all the characters of Waiting for Godot are suffering. Some of them are suffering from emotional pain. Some of them are suffering from physical pain. Some of them, like Vladimir, is suffering from intellectual pain, metaphysical pain. Vladimir and Stragon, especially Stragon, are starved for food in physical pain and bored to death. Both fear anonymous they who threaten to beat them at night. Every night, Stragon says that he is beaten by someone, but he doesn't know who is he or who is she. Stragon mentions billions of others who have been killed, but does not elaborate, explain. Lucky, meanwhile, is treated horribly, pulled about by a rope tied around his neck, beaten by Pozzo, and kicked repeatedly by Stragon. All of this suffering has a dehumanizing effect. It robs characters of their dignity, of course. Lucky, for example, is addressed by Pozzo as big and treated like a pack animal. Stragon is reduced to sucking on, is reduced to sucking on Pozzo's leftover chicken bones, pathetically, and even Pozzo, who imposes suffering on Lucky, is unable to get up from the ground when he falls in Act 2. Amid all this, Vladimir and Stragon desperately seek two things throughout the play: some recognition of their humanity and companionship. When the boy asks Vladimir what message he would like to send to Godot, he simply asks the boy to tell Godot that he saw Vladimir. What does that mean? That means that Vladimir wants to tell Godot that I am existent. I have an identity. I am aware of my time, and I am aware of my life, aware of my place. In other words, Vladimir wants to be acknowledged as a person. This is particularly important to him because the other characters in the play forget and mix up their identities. Pozzo and Lucky don't recognize Stragon and Vladimir in Act 2, whereas Stragon forgets about Lucky and Pozzo. In this environment, where people are so easily forgotten, Vladimir wants some confirmation of his own identity and humanity. Beyond this, Vladimir and Stragon also desire companionship. Although Stragon repeatedly suggests that they go their separate ways, the two stay together. Why? Because of a mutual fear of loneliness. Nonetheless, even as Vladimir and Stragon seek some kind of dignity and companionship in the face of suffering, they are remarkably indifferent to the suffering of others. Vladimir is at first outraged at Pozzo's treatment of Lucky, but soon gets used to it and even encourages Stragon to kick him. Finally, Vladimir and Stragon converse nonchalantly while Pozzo is stuck on the ground and crying for help in Act 2. And they first scheme how they might take advantage of him rather than help him. Vladimir and Stragon value their own relationship, but generally fail to sympathize with Pozzo and Lucky as other potential companions. Beckett suggests that this kind of indifference to the pain of others is what allows the vicious circle of suffering to continue on indefinitely as it does in the play. Thank you very much.